Hi guys. So, welcome to the next episode of the Coffee and Turner Syndrome podcast. Usually I do this as a live stream, but I am actually out of town this week, and so I decided to film it and upload the audio as a recorded version instead of doing the live stream. So I know I said live stream, and next week we'll be back to our regularly scheduled live stream. I just thought this would be easier with being out of town, and so this is what we're doing this week. So this week I wanted to talk about something that for me has been very important in my life, and I feel like for probably a lot of girls and women with Turner syndrome, it's been important, and that's the idea of faith and Turner syndrome. There's, to me, a very real connection, and I think there's a very real question of the purpose behind our diagnosis when we look at it as something that could be the will or purpose of God. And I want to talk about that and unpack that for a few minutes. So, this episode is titled My Turner Syndrome and My God. I am a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ as my Savior who died on the cross for my sins. And it is something that I hold very dear to me. And so I want to talk about kind of my experiences in life that have shown me that He has not left me alone in this diagnosis, and what my study has shown me for how to think of things like Turner syndrome, things like a genetic condition, in light of God being sovereign. So, first off, if you have not heard my testimony as far as when I was diagnosed and everything, it is on my YouTube channel, and it is one of the very first podcast episodes, so you can scroll back and see it. It's called My Testimony. Long story short, they gave me a less than 1% chance of surviving because of the fluid that was surrounding vital organs in my chest. And through all of that, I was diagnosed. The fluid went back to where it should be, and obviously I survived. I'm okay. And I, to be perfectly honest, have been very blessed to not have severe health complications. It's not to say I don't have things I have to deal with. It's not to say I have no health complications, but I have not had intense medical issues, and that would not have been what the doctors were expecting. So it's really been a blessing. That has been something that has really showed God's providence. And so right from the start, I kind of felt the presence of God in being diagnosed. So many people were praying with me and praying for me. So many people were bringing my condition and my story to God, and He listened. He is good. And so then I want to go into the whole idea of being diagnosed with a genetic condition. There are many different ones. Obviously, my story is a specific one, but in applying this to any medical issue, any difficult thing, it can be hard to understand why that would be the will or purpose of God to have us suffer in that way. And if you look in the Bible, there are many different things seen with suffering. There's a lot of different stories of suffering, not just Job, but Job is usually the biggest one thought of for obvious reasons. If you've not read the book of Job, it is a very interesting study in suffering. So the gist of it is because we live in a fallen world, things happen, right? As soon as the fall happened, sin got brought into the world, and everything that came with it came into the world. So it's broken, it's fallen, it's imperfect, and things happen like that. For no reason other than because the world is broken and fallen and imperfect, and that evil exists and sin exists. And so because of that, there are things like medical issues, diagnoses that we get that happen. Not because God's playing with us and wanting us to suffer, but because those things happen. But we also see in the Bible that God always uses those for a purpose. So it is never in vain, it's never for nothing, it's never just to suffer. There are many different good things that can come out of it. It can be hard to see it while you're in it, but if you look back, typically I've always been able to see good that has come out of something that in the midst of it, I would have never called it good. I would have not been able to fathom something good coming out of it. And so, studying those stories, studying things like that in the Bible, where you see suffering happening because we have free will and the world is fallen and things happen, but he also uses it for good, and he never leaves us alone in it. So, looking particularly at getting a diagnosis of Turner syndrome, there are so many painful things that can come from it. Really scary heart issues. Infertility has been the biggest one for me, as you guys know. And those aren't easy things. Like, those are really difficult, hard things. And those are things that take processing. It is not an overnight, all of a sudden you can just be okay type of situation. And for me, I have really seen God speaking into me dealing with my infertility and going through that journey of trying to figure it out. I think to some extent there's always going to be a difficultness to it. I will never not feel that pain, but he has not left me alone in it. He has not left me to suffer in it, and I can already see his purpose in it before we even have our first foster care placement or adoption placement or anything like that. That part of our story hasn't even happened, and we already can see his purpose in it, and that he's writing a story for us that is redeeming and a blessing and beautiful through something so painful. So for getting diagnosed with Turner syndrome, do I feel like God gave me Turner syndrome? No. Do I feel like he's written a story through that and given it purpose and has a unique purpose for it for me and for all of us? Yes. Turner syndrome and similar diagnoses are a product of a fallen world, but God does not leave us alone in it. God doesn't leave it unredeemed when we bring it to him, and I encourage you, as I have tried to always do, to bring those hard questions to him. He's not scared of it. He's not surprised by it, and he wants to speak into those for you. He wants to guide you through it. He wants you to bring those to him. So I hope that was encouraging. I hope that was helpful for thinking things like that through. Obviously, this could be a much more detailed conversation than this was. This was just something that I always think about, because when you're going through painful things, it is something that You have to process through, like, what's the purpose for this? What's the good of this that you can find? And it's it's a process. So I hope that was helpful, and I will talk to you guys later.